Hello, my name is Jillian Detweiler, and tonight I would like to talk to you on the issue of human trafficking and how it has become such a global and widespread problem in the world today. And I just want to share a bit about what I think God's heart is towards this issue and his heart towards the victims that are enslaved in this way. Just coming from the perspective of a follower of Jesus and a woman, it's become something that's so dear to my heart, and I've become very passionate about it. I'm just hoping that you guys can see a bit of this and catch a glimpse of how I think God views this. And that you guys, I just want to ask you guys to put yourself in the shoes of possibly someone who has had a family member or a close friend who's been sold into trafficking. I'm just going to jump into some statistics here. Human trafficking is currently the fastest growing crime in the world today. It's a modern day form of slavery that involves the illegal trade of human beings for the purpose of some form of forced exploitation. There are approximately 800,000 people trafficked across international borders annually, and out of these, 80% are women and girls and 50% are minors. No human being made in the image of God should be stripped of all dignity and treated as a commodity to be exploited and used up. As God's people, it is our job to fight and intervene for those who have no voice. Now let's just talk about a few of the issues that lead into the selling and exploiting of these people. The first would be poverty. Hundreds and thousands of women and children are entered and forced into sexual slavery and prostitution simply because of their financial state. And there are 4 ways in which these women and children are trafficked. Number 1 being they're lured by a false promise of employment in another country or town. They're promised a job as a waitress, as an actress, as a nanny. And they voluntarily go with these people and end up being held captive. Some women voluntarily consent to work in the sex industry as a prostitute, but once they get there, they're held bondage by a debt that is held over their head that ultimately they will never be able to repay. The third scenario is that they were abducted. This typically happens to younger children or young women, teenagers. And finally, it is possible that their family actually has sold them to a trafficker just as a means to make a profit. The most common tactic of coercion is the debt bondage, but a second most common tactic is that of traumatic bonding, quote, where the victim is instilled with deep-rooted fear coupled with gratitude for being allowed to live. Sex tourism is a thriving business, a vicious cycle of supply and demand. Trafficking of humans is a global problem. The global sex trade brings in $32 billion annually. It is ranked as the fastest growing organized crime, as well as the 3rd largest income revenue for organized crime. It is sobering to think that the buying and the selling of human beings comes in only 3rd to that of narcotics and arms sales. It is far more appealing to pimps and other sellers because of the profit made over a number of years, as opposed to the profits earned from drugs and narcotics, which are sold and used only one time. Asia is number 1 for human trafficking. Nowhere else in the world has it grown at such a rapid rate. It has been estimated that nearly 225,000 women and children, which is 1/3 of the trafficked population, have come from Southeast Asia. Cambodia, a country in Asia, is known as the rape camp. They hold the record for the fastest growing sex industry on the globe. The U.S. is not exempt from this. The U.S. Department of State estimates that anywhere from 14,000 to 17,000 people are trafficked in the U.S. annually, and most of these come from Mexico or East Asia. Not only is human trafficking illegal, it is also detrimental to the health and the well-being of its victims. These people are exposed to horrible conditions that can affect their physical, mental, and their emotional well-being. Physically, many contract HIV/AIDS virus. Some suffer from long-lasting damage due to vaginal and rectal trauma, and all are either physically abused and or tortured by their trafficker. Emotionally, most come out of it with post-traumatic stress disorder, acute anxiety, and severe depression. It is common for them to have feelings of helplessness and shame, humiliation, self-hatred, and suicidal thoughts are very common, whether they're still in the sex trade or once they get rescued from it. Many of these women eventually become psychologically and emotionally disabled from working in this trade, and it's common for these victims to turn to substance abuse as a form of addictions due to the forced coercion that was placed on them by their pimp. Socially, it's greater chance of illiteracy, homelessness, poverty, and isolation from society. And because of this, these women and these children have increased vulnerability to violence and to abuse. The business of human slavery must be stopped. It targets the poor and the oppressed and makes them more oppressed. It has become so widespread that it is now a global crisis. It has lasting repercussions of physical, mental, and emotional trauma on those who are its victims. My call to action is that we take action. One of the biggest hurdles to a lack of action is a lack of knowledge. In some cases, people choose to be unaware and ignore the evil that is going on around them. But there is no lack of knowledge. There is no lack of resources. We have been made aware. And God's heart is for the oppressed. And He has instructed us to take action by being a voice for those who have no voice. I ask you to open your heart and ask the Lord what part He wants you to play. This could be financially, this could be through a commitment of prayer, or through personally raising awareness or starting your own organization. However, it's not an option of action or no action. We must take action. Thank you.